Welcome to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassy, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society, whose mission is creating unity through music, or as I like to say, making connections through music with the intention of bringing peace. And I'm here today in the worldwide headquarters, Studio One of the Planetary Gigs Society. And I am very, very pleased to be able to talk today with a good friend, professional colleague, fabulous woman, fabulous singer, Christina Lewellen. Christina, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with me today.
I'm happy to. It's been a long time in the pipeline, so here we are, finally. I'm so excited.
That we kind of have this professional connection. So we were first introduced by Sarah Wood, another association executive, and you were president of Harmony Inc., and now you're immediate past president, and we were talking about some legal stuff. I'd like to ask about how music came into your life, but maybe you could just for a minute say something about Harmony for people who don't really know what Harmony is.
Sure. So Harmony Incorporated is an international organization of female barbershop quartet singers. And so I think that some folks may be familiar with, there's two female organizations, exclusively female organizations, and one is Sweet Adeline. In 1959, Harmony Incorporated split off of Sweet Adeline because we wanted to, we were addressing some social issues at the time. The organization wanted to be open to women of color. And there was also a movement to ensure that each member of the organization had a vote, that it wasn't kind of the hierarchy that went up and through the board structure, that it's one voice, one vote. So that was, of course, decades ago. We're now celebrating this year our 60th anniversary, which is kind of cool.
All right.
But it's an organization, we're primarily in Canada and the U.S. And I've been a member for years now. I won an international championship in Harmony Incorporated with my quartet back in 2012,
Nice.
And we are called Epic. I was a tenor singer in that group, and then we started a chorus here. My husband and I started a chorus in the Northern Virginia area called Villanova, and we're still competitive and active in Harmony Incorporated. So yeah, I just finished a 2-year stint as president. And I'm still on the board. We've been through a lot in that time. And I know you've gotten to know us a bit better during that time. But ultimately, this sort of came up through, I've been in Barbershop Harmony most of my life because my dad joined the Barbershop Harmony Society the year that I was born. And so he's been singing a cappella music most of my life. And so it just, throughout my whole childhood, there were always records. I'd climb up, we had it on top of the fridge, right? And so I'd get the record of the top 20 barbershop quartets in the world or whatever, and climb up the chair and stick the vinyl on there. So barbershop music was always around. My dad has directed a men's chorus in a little tiny town called Warsaw, New York, where I grew up. And so he's directed that chorus most of my life. And so all those guys were like my uncles and my granddads. And, even as an adult, I would go back home to visit. I'd be out for a run at night or just nothing going on a Tuesday night. And I would pop in and hang out with the guys and sing on the risers or pick up a book and start singing whatever they were working on. So it was always a part of my life. Like the barbershop harmony thing was just a thing. And what's interesting is that when you are in the barbershop harmony world, we compete. Like we have contests. We name champions, both quartet and chorus. And so a lot of what that means is that in your life, your days off revolve around the contest cycle. So when my dad was competing with his quartet, it was like, all right, what weekend is your contest? And we would run up to Rochester or go off to Syracuse, New York. And so a lot of the family time that we spent together was going and doing these competitions. And now, fast forward all these years later, I married a barbershopper. We met at a competition. We gave birth to little barbershoppers. And now we do the same thing. We now have created a third generation of barbershop singers. And we run around the country and we do qualifying events in the spring and international events in the fall. And we do it with my kids and my mom and my sister. My dad still sings. Actually, my dad is in Nashville, Tennessee right now. He may literally be on the international stage as we speak. Like he's competing right now with a quartet. And my husband's judging. So it just kind of shows you how this is a big family thing.
Well, when I got introduced to you and harmony, it was sort of for legal issues, and I didn't know much about barbershop. I'd heard about barbershop. I had an in-law relative who was into barbershop, and he was a really good singer. He and his wife were really good singers, but I didn't know that much about it, and I didn't sing that much really as a kid. We were Catholics, and we kind of sang like this in church, and it wasn't any big deal. We just didn't know what we were doing. It wasn't a focus, but it sounds like such a fabulous way to grow up, to be singing all the time. And the one thing that I can say, when I did come to the board meeting that you had, and afterwards the board members, all these wonderful ladies, sang a couple of songs, and I felt like I was inside of a Tibetan healing bowl. It was so profound and full and deep and everything. It's just amazing. I really wish more folks would, I need to learn to sing harmony, but I wish more folks would be focused on this and know about it. It's just fantastic. Have you felt like you've been inside of a Tibetan healing bowl since you were a kid?
I think maybe I take it for granted since I have been in that Tibetan healing bowl for so long. Maybe I just am used to it, but I'll tell you, it never gets old, right? Like the 4-part harmony thing, we follow the traditional voicing. So the melody singer is the lead, and the lowest singer is the bass. The highest singer is the tenor, and then we have a baritone that does that fill. Usually the baritone fills the chord either above or below the lead line, the melody line, depending on where it is. And it's so powerful. It's not easy. Contemporary a cappella singers will come over to Barbershop and be like, well, wait a minute, you have to sing the same thing every time? Like, this is intense, right? So to get the 4 voices or the 4 parts, because it could be multiple people on the same part with a big chorus. But when you get the 4 parts singing the same, singing in tune, singing the same vowel with the same synchronization, there is something that opens up. It's something very special that is both the overtone that it can create, the undertone that it can create. And, I remember when my daughter was little, my husband asked her, what an overtone was, and that kind of 5th voice sort of thing that you hear. And I remember her saying, that's when the music is really loud, that's the voice that comes from the ceiling. And that's how she described it. So even before we know what it is as a human, she knew that it felt good, and she knew that it felt somewhat spiritual, and really like it raises the hair on your arms, and you just like sit up a little straighter. And I am not a trained musician, but I grew up in this hobby, this lifestyle, and so for me, as my career has advanced and I've become more busy and had more responsibility as a business and association executive, having barbershop in my life is like that thing, that retreat, that special thing. And, whether it's Tibetan or whether it's the voice from the ceiling, whatever you think it is, it's healing. It's stress reduction, like on crack.
Yeah. Stress reduction on crack. That's a good way to put it. How do you describe what is really going on when you hit those 4 voices, and it just, I don't know how to describe it. I know it's powerful. But
and it's like a lifelong endeavor. So it's like, you could be a great singer. And this I've experienced a bunch. Like when we formed Epic, the quartet that I was in that won the international championship, we had 2 barbershoppers, myself and our baritone, Christina Adams. We grew up with barbershop. Both our dads are barbershoppers, right? And then we had 2 new singers on the lead and the bass part. And that's really kind of unusual that you have the harmony parts, tenor and baritone, trying to put something together. But the lead is this beautiful, talented jazz singer named Ann Albright. And the bass at the time had 0 experience really with barbershop, but she grew up singing like a lot of church music and harmonization like that. And so Shauna Oshiro, a music therapist that my husband knows, So we all got together and we're like, all right, we're going to do this barbershop thing. And what's so crazy about it is that even though Ian and Shauna were notable, like recognized, celebrated vocalists in these other spaces, they came to Barbershop and it was like, this is hard. This is really hard, because if you bring any kind of, if you're not exactly where you need from an intonation standpoint, or if you sing, you come from a different part of the country and you sing a vowel a different way. The way that you sing your might be different than how I sing your. And if you don't lock up those vowels, the overtone isn't there. So to make that magic happen, it's a team sport. It is not, and you'll see it all the time in barbershop. 4 tremendously talented vocalists that get together with all sorts of ego and can't make it work. All it feels like is 4 people singing 4 parts. Where the magic happens is in the relationship. Where the magic happens is in the love and the cherishing of each other and the respect of each other. And as soon as you get to that place where you play nice, where you realize that you may be the best tenor to walk the planet, but if you don't play nice with your other parts, it's not going to be magic. And that's what's crazy about barbershop. So, the fact that I've been doing it since I was 16, or the fact that my husband's been doing it since he was 14, doesn't matter. It doesn't mean you're any closer to being perfect than you were when you were a teenager. It's this evolution that can happen through a lifetime. I hear it's a bit like playing golf. I don't know. I'm not a sports person, but like there's always that next level of both in terms of your personal development as a singer and performer, but then also it's a marriage. It's so difficult to find 3 other people who have your goals, match your voice. You could have a real dark bass singer and a real bright lead singer. They're not going to be able to create any overtones because there's no match in that voice. So it's a personality match. It's a musical match. It's harder than being married, I think.
Wow.
Because there's 4 of you.
So you've mentioned this creating overtones a couple of times. That sounds like almost, you mean you have to listen and sync up so much that the 4 different sounds, like maybe there's more than 4 sounds, I don't know. That
it does. It almost sounds like there's a 5th note. You can hear it. It's very odd. It's just kind of a cool, fun. It's either, sometimes above, sometimes below undertone, but like it syncs up so well that it pops up in this other dimension and you can hear another voice that isn't there.
So the tones themselves combine to create another tone or more tones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow, it seems pretty special. I need to come to some of your barbershop events, I think.
Yeah, they're so fun. There's usually a lot of beer and a lot of laughter.
Oh my gosh, I would. So listening must be also very, very important too.
It is. Cool.
And you have to practice a lot. I mean, is it really practicing a lot, or you kind of get in the sync and you just step up after you practice?
No, I mean, I think that that's what's so cool about it is that you could sing the same song, for 3-4 years at 100 different gigs and still find new layers or push the limits of how long you hold that note, And so one of my superpowers as a performer, one of the things I bring to my group is that I have a pretty significant breath capacity. So I always get in the barbershop world what's called the post. So we'll get to the end of the song and there's always this big climax, or in a lot of arrangements, there's a big climax where the other voices resolve around it, create a little bit more tension, create another little build. We're going to breathe. Is it ever going to stop? And then it finally resolves, right? So we could sing the same song for a million years, but you create, the tag gets longer and longer. And finally I'm going to drown, I've got to breathe. But the longer you sing with each other, the more musical it can get, and the more you can kind of push your own limits as a performer. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
There's always that next level.
What about rhythm? Because you don't have instrumentation, but you need to stay on beat, I guess. Is that just everybody has to understand the beat and the rhythm as you're going along? Just know it?
Hard for existing musicians to read music, to come over to the barbershop world and look at our music. It can be frustrating for them because we don't necessarily, we take a lot of interpretive, we have a wide berth, that we sort of operate within this interpretive adjacent kind of a space, so we don't read it directly off the music. If it's a dotted note, traditional musicians will say this is what that equals in the music. That's not how we roll. If it sounds good, if a chord is banging, then we don't resolve it. We just hang out on it until the four of us, you almost get this little body language that goes on within the quartet where eventually when it will resolve, because you've been singing with those folks for so long. Can't even speak to the actual what is happening in like formal language. But what I do know is that in barbershop music, we take liberty with rhythm, and we also, a lot of times, the bass, the low singer, will be driving rhythm. So often in barbershop, we talk about the lead singer being the storyteller and the bass singer being the one who sort of drives the underlying rhythm. So yeah, you have to sync up.
So yep. So the time could be a little bit fluid then. You don't have to be sort of exactly right on the beat because which make, I kind of think that a little bit of a fluidity in time can be, if it's done well, can really make a difference. So there are thousands of barbershoppers all over the world. I guess it's sort of something a lot of people don't really know about, but there's a lot of folks who do this, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And, in the larger organizations that have a more global presence than Harmony Incorporated, it's stunning when you've got men from Sweden or women from England. And, when you sing, whatever accent, whatever your native language is out the window, right? Because you're all just most of the time singing in English, or if they're singing in their language. It's just amazing that it doesn't really matter, because that it's just then at that point about the harmonies and about the chart, the arrangement. So it is a global thing. It's really a great way for people to have this connection. And even with Harmony Incorporated, even though we're not physically all over the globe, we are an organization that really celebrates our U.S.-Canadian relationship, and it means a lot to us. It's a big part of our culture, and to have that cross-border compatibility, regardless of what kind of stuff is happening in the socioeconomic and political scene, like none of that even comes into our world. So it's just really, and I think, one of the things besides geographic differences that it sort of bridges, the thing that I love the most, and I know that you and I have had an opportunity to experience this a bit together, is that, I grew up, barbershop is a guy saying, my dad sang in his organization, my husband sings and judges in his organization. But for me, having a female-only singing organization is special to the nth degree. So, in my work world, in the corporate world, we struggle. I'll just speak specifically from a female's perspective, mm-hmm. but I'll kind of caveat that, like, obviously any kind of minority group or not can find this connection. So I'll just take it, please know that it can apply broadly. But for me and my perspective, part of why I wanted to step into leadership, not just win a crown, win a championship and move on with my life. I wanted to step into leadership because the music is so special, and having it led by a bunch of women is really, it's like an amplifier. It's a multiplier in its effect, because, when you go to work, if there are 5 candidates for a single VP or CEO job and only one is a woman, of the 5, we're all competing to get that one spot. There's this female competitiveness that is still yet to be resolved in our society.
Right.
I think we're making progress, but it's not resolved. It is still, there is tension in all of that. It is unresolved chord. And so to have a place in my world where I can interact with women, I can compete with women, and I can lead with women, and yet we are all bound by this very spiritual interaction of singing together. It is very difficult to be frustrated with or hate a person you're singing with. It's hard to bring hatred or competitiveness, true competitiveness, into an experience where you're creating this music together, right? So we compete, but it is the most positive competition I've ever experienced in my life, whether it's subtle, unspoken competition or like outright competition. There's something so unique about it. I have 4 daughters, and all of them are being raised in this community of Harmony Inc. singers. It matters to me. It matters that they see an opportunity to interact with women, to compete with other women, and yet give them a hug. The minute the competitor steps off the stage, who may or may not beat you, that you run over and give them a hug and tell them how proud you are of how far they've come. That's really important to me. Very, very important to me.
That's pretty profound, because I think we've got this patriarchal thing going on, and the competition there is so raw, and we could probably use a bit of that, feminine competition, learning more about that. I think that'd be a very positive thing for everybody. So a couple of thoughts, and maybe you could, wrap them up or talk about this. You mentioned if you have some singers who come together and they're, if they've got these egos, it doesn't really work. So that sort of implies that there's a surrendering somehow. Maybe that's not the right word. And then you also talked about the spirituality aspect of it. And, particularly with Harmony, you also have just the female only aspect of it. So, how do those things, it sounds like they kind of work together to create some magic, but what's the spiritual aspect of what's the surrender aspect of it in the singing?
I think that that's something that not everybody maybe feels the way that I do. Some people may come at it with ego. Some people may come at it for the recognition, the medals. I mean, anything that you do, like in our organization, when you're an international champion, you get a gold medal, but you also get a crown. And so the sparkly tiara, that might be why some people do it. But you know what? The thing is, Jeff, you can tell. You can, as an audience member, it's so vulnerable. When you are up there singing about loss or singing about joy, singing about anything that actually just really resonates with, kind of opens up your soul and shows your vulnerability with the audience. That's a really connected and transparent experience. And so if you're sitting there in the audience and you're watching barbershop singers who are all about their ego and what's in it for them, you can tell, that's not a super spiritual transaction, right? Mm-hmm. But then there's other times where a person gets up there and she may not be the best singer you've ever heard. There may be some out of tune chords. There may be some awkwardness, or you may be worried that she's a bit nervous. But man, if you get into a song and she tells the truth of that story from her perspective, it's like everything around you just sort of stops. Like all you see is that spotlight on that human. And it's very powerful. I think we've all had some experiences like that, right? With music, whatever your preferred taste or genre is, where it's almost like the tunnel vision on those performers and you suddenly forget to breathe, or you're not allowed to breathe until she breathes, right? Until they take their collective breath. And then you as an audience member are going, okay, now I can breathe, right? That right. happens a lot in barbershop music. And it's such a stripping away of your mask, and if you're doing it well and if you're doing it right. And if you're not, if you want to be up there like a big shot and kind of keep your guard up, then I think the audience knows. I think it's hard to believe you if you're singing about loss or whatever. It's hard to have that connection. So, certainly I'm sure this exists in other worlds. But for me, again, I don't really consider myself, I'll always say, I think it drives my husband crazy, I'm not a musician, I'm a barbershopper. It's funny because I've taught myself to read intervals on sheet music, and I have an international championship to my name, and I can't even tell you what signature, like key signature, like I can't read, right. I can't pick up a piece of music and tell you what key it's in, but if somebody blows the pitch, then I have a sense of intervals and I could read the entire piece of music. But I learned that from barbershop. I just know that if the note goes from here to here, this is what my voice does to match that. So I'm an interval type singer. Right. And so I'm sure that this experience kind of exists in other genres. I just know what I know, and that's that I grew up in this space, and I can kind of tell, if somebody's in it with the ego. You really got to strip all that away. and that's what I love about it too, is that they also say that barbershop harmony is kind of the everyman's choir, right? Because you don't need to learn how to read music. We'll have electronic learning tracks for that, or we'll teach you by ear. It's ear harmonization. So you really don't need to be a trained musician to sing barbershop. It really is kind of every man's choir. And that allows, here in the DC area, it probably won't surprise you to know that our chapter, has executives and JAG attorneys and military and, and I'm sure there's probably people who, are hourly wage workers. It doesn't matter. We don't care. We just walk in and she's the VP of membership and she's the finance director and here's the assistant director and here's the choreographer. It doesn't even matter what you do. It's another thing I love exposing my kids to. Lots of powerful women, and power is not necessarily defined by their job. It's really cool.
Yeah, that is very cool. And I just keep thinking about if you're singing together and sort of surrendering and giving up that ego and just joining in, it's almost like you have to just tell the truth, as you said, in your singing to get that overtone, to get that place where it combines and adds and is additive.
Yeah. I can tell a quick story about how I keep going back to this experience that I had with Epic, the year that we won. We woke up that morning, you prepare for months. We've been working for a year, working with very specialized coaches. We had all these arrangements that were suited to us and customized to us. So we were going in and we were hoping kind of like the best outcome. We may have been ranked like 4th or 5th going into it, maybe hoping for like 3rd place for our first year. That would be amazing, right? So we go to international, and the night before the competition, our lead singer got food poisoning. Right. And literally not a good day for her, right? And she's a very important, special part of our quartet, this jazz singer with a very sultry voice, right? So she's in the hospital in Orlando, like she is ill. And we were popping her with like anti-nausea meds and anti-fever stuff. And she was a mess, but she was going to get this thing done, right? So like, I remember her like laying back in the chair and we're putting like makeup on her while she sleeps because she had been up all night at the hospital. So we go out and we do the first round of competition. And I don't remember pretty much anything about it because at that point, it wasn't about the coaching and preparing. It was all about Ann. All of our energy that we had as a foursome, as a unit, was about helping hold up Ann. And somehow something very spiritual happened because we made it through that round. I'll never forget that we walked off the stage. You go out in Barbershop, you sing in front of the judges, you accept the applause, you sing a second song, and then you leave. There's no talking. It's just very formal. You're there for your job. You get off the stage. So we walk off the stage, and as we're exiting, Ann practically collapsed into our arms. She was so ill. She was so tired that whatever we did to be out on that stage for the 6 or 8 minutes that it took us to sing those 2 songs, somehow the 4 of us got it done. And when she got off stage, she kind of collapsed. All the energy was gone. All the adrenaline was gone. And we made it to the second round. And so we went out there again, changed the clothes, make it to the second round, sing our song. We go back, we sit down. And for us, the winning in this experience came from surviving it together. We later found out that we actually won the competition by 2 points.
All right.
It was very unexpected. But everyone in our organization jokes about that because the rumor mill made its way. They're like, oh, I think the lead is sick, So everybody knew that was a very raw and vulnerable. At that point, it didn't even matter how we placed. We didn't care. We were just trying to get through it. And it was an experience and it was a memory. Some of those moments backstage offered. We always huddled up and did a little prayer before we went out on the stage. And it was, we survived and we are bonded for life because of those moments, let me tell you.
Wow, that's really an example of the power of music. I mean, it's almost like the intention that you put together, the energy, the vibrations held you up, held you together.
It did.
I mean,
it did.
We've had some conversations recently, folks, Victor Wooten and others, Bob Franceschini, who I talked with, say sometimes when you're singing, it's almost like it's not even you doing it, that there's something else. How would you just react to that or describe that?
Absolutely. And here's where I'll kind of take it to, what's really interesting is that as my husband and I, we got together because, his quartet came up and did a show in New York where I was living. That's how we met. So we've done this barbershop thing for a long time. But then our first biological child that we had, our daughter Morgan, we identified that she was on the autism spectrum. And part of it was because she was not talking as a toddler, but she would sing, right? So we hear these stories in music therapy about how, and my husband went, no, she's talking, listen. Went, no, she's not talking, she's singing. That's different. So that really started tapping us into, first of all, we were troubleshooting and getting her the resources she needed. And now she is wildly successful. She's going into her junior year in high school next year, and she's brilliant. And all that early stuff that we stressed about with language and all that, long past that. She still is, by the way, a stunning musician. She has perfect pitch. She's in the band. Music's important to her too. But what it really kind of got us tapped into was the power of what the music can do. So my husband had this kind of midlife career shift where he went back to school to become a music therapist, where he took all of his experience as a barbershopper and actually put the research around it to understand how it works. He did his work for his master's degree in the realm of the effects of choir singing on patients with Parkinson's disease. And it was stunning because the thing is, he did all these, and this is where you'll see the ignorance again. I know enough to be this dangerous, but he did all these measures of vocal health at the beginning of the study on the folks who are living with Parkinson's disease. And then he went through an 8 or 12-week protocol of executing regular choir singing with their caretakers, making it a very communal event. It wasn't just about do these exercises. His research was, what if we sing in a choir? And what if we sing in a choir with your caregivers so that the 1 day a week or the 2 days a week that we sing, it's not about this hierarchy, this hierarchy of I am the one who takes care of you. Instead, we even that out for a few hours and we're all just sing together. So Richard was the director, and it would be Parkinson's patients plus their caregivers, their primary caregivers, whether that's a spouse or a child or whatever. And at the end of the study, it was stunning how much stronger the voice got in all these different measures of how you can evaluate the health of the voice. And so that was his research, and he's been recognized for this research. And now he's a practicing music therapist where, he works in schools with kids with developmental disabilities, just like our daughter had a music therapist back all those years ago. But to me, that some of that special spiritual connection that can happen. And then it helps me understand that when you go back to the barbershop world, and even the leadership in barbershop world, like even the administrative side of leading a barbershop harmony organization, that's where all this special sauce kind of comes together in my mind, because it is a different part of our brain. There's something very powerful that we are only beginning to figure out the full impact of what music can do.
Yeah, it's such a healing thing. Oh my God, I have all these conversations with folks, and it's just amazing, blows my mind about how powerful it is. So do you have any other thoughts about, what can we do? I mean, I'm here with this Planetary Gig Society. We're trying to make a difference. I believe we can make a difference. I know we can make a difference through music because it is so powerful, but, maybe baby steps, maybe side steps. Do you have some thoughts about that? You've been involved in the leadership of a female singing organization. I mean, what you do, I think, is fabulous. I can't wait to come check out some of your performances and that sort of thing, or competitions, if you call them that. Do you have thoughts about that, Christine?
I think that obviously there's this super healing thing that happens that we all need, whether you're just listening to music in your car or whether you're actually participating in making music, gigging with other folks. In my case, you get together Tuesday night and you rehearse with your quartet, or you get together Sunday and you rehearse with your chorus. But there is something about making that music that really strips away any of the artificial social constructs that we put either on ourselves or on each other, right? So it does not matter what I drive, It doesn't matter how much money I make. It doesn't matter what my education was. When you walk through the door of chorus rehearsal and you step into the room with Bellanova Chorus, what matters is I stand on the risers. My husband is our director. He calls us to attention. We make music. It really is so freeing. And in very few places can you find that kind of equality where it sort of strips out all of that stuff. Maybe even in church, some people might find that, but there's always a little bit of that keeping up with the Joneses or maybe being that much more pious than the next.
Yeah.
When you go into music, and especially in the type of music that I do, my daughter, who's 13 years old, she tried out for the front row of the chorus as we were preparing for international competition, and she was given no special treatment as a child or no demerit for being a young woman. She made the front row because she had the skill to sing and dance and twirl and keep it in rhythm and follow the steps, and she was in the front row. I was so proud of her, right?
Yeah,
Where else can a 13-year-old young woman build her self-esteem in this very unique network of peers? We're connected because we like music and we're women. So, it just didn't matter that she doesn't even have a college education yet. She's able to kind of throw down and get recognized for what she can do. So I think, what can we do? How can we bring peace? I believe so strongly in the mission of Harmony Incorporated. I hope everybody can go find their Harmony Incorporated. Go find whatever
Right.
Harmony Incorporated is for you. Go find it. For me, Harmony Incorporated it has since evolved. I always thought of it as a women's singing organization. All one breath. But in the last few years, and you've seen some of this transformation happening with me with some of the legal challenges we've had and some of the evolution of the barbershop harmony space, it has now come to mean more to me as a women's organization. We just happen to connect and evolve together because we sing and we like this type of music. I always thought it was a barbershop organization first, and I'm changing my mind about that. I think that it's actually a women's organization that is connecting and delivering via barbershop harmony. But there's something special when you sit around the table in a room. Like once I had this experience with my board, I'll never forget it as long as I live, where I asked the women of the board, how has Harmony Incorporated changed you? And not a single one of them said, because I'm a better singer. We were all in tears. It was about confidence. It was about this. I came into this when I was at a low point in my life. I was struggling with depression. I was struggling with issues. I was going through a divorce. My children had just left my home. I had just lost a baby. I mean, this is a healing organization. It's like therapy, but fun.
Yeah.
And it really, so to me, what can we do? Where can this go? I mean, really the potential is endless. And honestly, if you talk to me in a year, maybe I'll have a more cohesive way of explaining how I feel about this. I can feel that I'm midstream on it. My own interpretation of how powerful this organization is and how powerful the effects of music can be. It's not just the music. There's something about the social piece of it that is just, it's so incredibly healing and empowering. I don't know. I hope I have it in my life until I go to the grave and beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just very spiritual what you describe. I mean, I think it's important for women to, after all these so many issues we have and the harassment and assault and blah, 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 blah. It's awful for women to find their voice together, find their power together, find that spiritual connection together. Man, that's a great thing.
And if I can just say, I mean, we're right now in Barbershop Harmony. I don't want to dwell on this, and there's no resentment in it, but right now there's a movement in Barbershop Harmony to move toward blending the genders and having a mixed harmony experience. That's very special too. I mean, I love singing with my husband. I could sing tags all night long with my dad. Like, I get it. I grew up, hanging out with the guys, and mixed harmony is also very special. But for all the reasons I just described, the ability to sing exclusively with women and the ability to lead and be a part of an organization run exclusively by women it's not backwards. It's not in any way limiting. In my opinion, it is more contemporary and more necessary than ever before. Some might think gender exclusive. Oh, that's weird. Why would you do that? There's a lot of reasons to do it, and it's very important. Women don't have a lot of opportunity to be amongst ourselves in this way, in this very special way. So it matters a lot. It's really important. And I think that even though trends are moving that way, Harmony Inc. is staying exclusive to its original mission. And I think that that's where we're going to live. We're going to stay there for a good long time.
Well, that's awesome. Christine, I think, I hope that some folks listen to this. I hope that some women listen to this. And I think what you've been talking about is very inspiring. All right. So thanks very much for the time. I really appreciate it. Look forward to the next time we can get together and learn a little bit more about barbershop singing.
Absolutely. We will bring you in to the dark side. We will teach you tags and convert you.
All right. I know I'd love to do that. All right. Thanks very much, Christina Lewellen, everybody.
You're welcome.
You've been listening to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassy, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society. We talk with musicians and others about the power of music and how we can use music to help create a better world. Please check out our website, www.planetarygigs.org, for information about some of the organizations promoting music and musicians, resources about the power of music, books, movies, articles, including new research on music and the brain. We welcome your support. The Planetary Gig Society is a Section 501c3 charitable organization, and you can donate on the website. You also can receive a free email signature block demonstrating your support for Planetary Gig Society. Please follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Planetary Gigs. And we want to thank fabulous musician and teacher Eric Weinberg of Little Eric Studios for the Planetary Gig Talk music titled Chill Kid, It's Saul. So please check out Planetary Gig Talk on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. Subscribe and hear all the upcoming episodes. Thanks very much.